Are you in recording on the mic?
Yeah, everything's recording right now. We're actually we've already commenced OVOSS 66.
Here, let me do the slate so I can start the audio and sync it up, or else everything's gonna be fucked up when I try to put them together.
66, anti-media.
Alright, so now talk how you want.
Thank you. All right, welcome to our very own special show, episode 66. For those of us who haven't joined us since our last episode, we are back down in the South Bay.
Yeah, back down in South Bay. I like this trend we got going on right now. We got the little hashtag South Bay Uprising in the works. Have you been to Machete Beer House by any chance, Nick?
No, I haven't actually. Is it down here?
Yeah, it's on Highland in National City. And it's kind of like the first, legit, craft beer bar down in the hood. And it's pretty awesome. We went there a couple weeks ago and interviewed a guy that's running a brewery out of Chula Vista.
Nice, man. That sounds good. Yeah, I heard about the one that's opening on 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, that's Fall Brewing, I believe.
Yeah, I'm excited because down here, man, it's like, well, across the street, I got a shit dive bar, and you go in there and it's just 60-year-old tweakers and stuff like that, and it's just no one to hang out with, man. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy talking to 60-year-old tweakers, but they're not that interesting.
Is that the Lion's Den?
Yeah, the Lion's Den right there.
Oh man.
But I'm glad to find out that there is a craft brew place around here. The closest one I knew about before that was down in Barrio Logan. But yeah, they are opening one in Chula Vista too, so that's nice, man. Get to go down and meet younger people and enjoy some decent beer without going to one of these, places that are right here right now that are kind of boring or just lame. I don't know how to describe them, but
yeah, no, it's good to see some stuff coming down in Chula Vista. I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot with the city ordinances on not having anything over 3 stories tall, in the downtown area, because stuff's moving out to East Lake. But
yeah, well, what do you know? Government shooting itself in the foot. It happens all the time.
I think on that note, it's time to introduce our guest today, Nick from theantimedia.org. You are a founder, correct, of the Antimedia?
Yeah, I'm the founder of theantimedia.org. Also the Facebook page. A lot of people watching right now probably follow our Facebook page. They may not be familiar with the website, but we do have a website. And it's kind of something that started off as a little hobby after following politics for a while and just getting really pissed off after seeing what goes on between the politics and the media and the corporations and all that. Started off as a hobby I was doing when I had my old business on the side. And then when that ended, I was doing it out of my mom's backyard. That was my office. I had a dinette table set up in my mom's backyard for a while. And then one day it just started, I hired a writer and then another writer and then another writer. And now we've got 25 people working with us. And it just blew up kind of, not overnight, but in a matter of several months. We're going now on a year strong of really pushing the website out there. The Facebook page has been around for 3 years now, but we've gone through, this is our 3rd website. The first 2 were flawed or just not what we wanted, and we never really got any traction on it, but we finally got this website up that we have now for about a year, and it's been going really strong, man. We just entered into the top 7,000 websites in the world, or in the United States. We're in the top 20,000 websites in the world. And it's really cool because we put out a lot of information that people many times just wouldn't see. And that's why we're called the Anti-Media, is we cover stuff that the mainstream media doesn't. And at the same time, we're trying to undermine the mainstream media because it's a destructive entity. It's a destructive institution. The entire mainstream media, 90% of it is owned by literally 6 companies. And therefore, we have very limited amounts of choices when it comes to the media. The media kind of works hand in hand with government narratives. Obviously, with the Iraq War, the weapons of mass destruction bullshit, pardon my French, was sold to the American people from every news station, every magazine, every newspaper. And so this is the kind of stuff that we're trying to put out there in the new media to try to prevent that kind of stuff, prevent these big mistakes, and at the same time change the entire culture of the media. And if anybody's been paying attention on social media, you'll see that that's actually happening. Everybody can be a journalist now on Twitter, on Periscope, on Facebook, and websites like ours, we grab those citizen journalists, we find that information that's coming from the ground, and we aggregate it into articles, and so that people can get the the truth, man. And the live streams, the people that are out there with their cell phones taking live video, you could actually watch it as it happens, like what was going on in Ferguson and Baltimore after the police killed the guys and there was rioting and stuff. You know, you could see it on Fox News, and they're going to try to paint a narrative and a biased opinion and try to feed that to people. But when you can actually access the live feeds, the live video of people on the ground, you get a whole different story, and that's what we're hoping to bring out with our website.
I want to kind of explore those humble beginnings of the anti-media. What did your mom think of what you're up to?
My mom's always been pretty supportive, man. In fact, she was a former Democrat, and nothing against people that are still Democrats and stuff. But in the last election, she voted independent, which is a good progress, good step forward.
So who was she voting for as an independent?
Last election, she actually voted for Gary Johnson, and he was running as the Libertarian guy. I ended up not voting in the last election. I started off as a Ron Paul supporter in 2011, and then I just got so overwhelmed with the way that the media operates and the whole electoral system. I just got really kind of disenfranchised with it, and I just didn't actually vote. But I think, my mom really was supportive of it. Like I said, she gave me some space in her backyard with a dinette table and a chair, and I was just out there working 12 hours a day in the sun or in the rain, whatever, it didn't matter. We had a little overhang over the patio, so I had a little bit of shelter. And the internet sucked, and it would get disconnected every 30 minutes. I had to go reset the router and stuff, man. But now I got a decent router, got an office, and it's really, I'm really happy with the way it's going. We're really starting to get it like up to this more professional level. Everything is fact checked, everything is edited correctly. All of our stories are timely. Or the one thing that we like to do a lot is just take a narrative that's being put out there in like somewhat of like a media frenzy. For instance, with like Caitlyn Jenner and what was going on with that. Don't get me wrong, I'm fully supportive of the transgender movement, but it was turned into a media frenzy. And so we put out articles that kind of counter those narratives. And one of our lead editor, Carrie Wedler, actually wrote the article about it. It was actually the most popular news article in the entire internet for one day. And so that was a pretty big milestone for us. And and so we went from being a pretty obscure Facebook page to last week we made the front page of Reddit. In June we had the most viral article in the entire world. And it's just things are picking up for us, and I'm just really glad to see that people are more inclined, especially young people. And that's what I've noticed. Our audience is very much mostly young people from about 40 and under. We do have several people that are older people that are kind of privy to what's going on. But what's really cool is that young people are starting to become more inclined to receive the message, this anti-establishment, anti-corporate message that we're really pushing out there.
So as as like a self-reported anti-media site, do you feel the need to kind of play devil's advocate constantly to always kind of be that anti-media, even if you sometimes maybe agree with what the big media story is? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you ever have to go against yourself a little bit just to make sure you're kind of still playing that role?
Yeah, definitely, man. That's one of the things that we really support is editorial independence with our journalists. And we have a very broad spectrum of journalists that have various different political ideologies and stuff. And so, every now and then we publish stuff that I personally don't agree with, or that our editors may not agree with, but that our journalist wants to put out there. And so we're always, a lot of times showing both sides of the argument. One of our journalists wrote an article about how Donald Trump is the best presidential candidate ever. It's not exactly what you would think. We weren't actually promoting Donald Trump. But then we also put out a meme the next day, really showing how Donald Trump's rhetoric is very Nazi-like and stuff like that. And so, sometimes our audience is like, well, what? I don't understand. What's your ideology? I want to know what you guys believe in. It's like, well, we're not. That's what we're trying to refrain from, is being too ideological. We just want to put plenty of viewpoints out there, and everyone reading can kind of come to conclusions on their own, what they want to believe in and not believe in, and what they want to practice, don't practice. And that's one thing that we're trying to really stay away from, is trying to control too closely our ideology and try to push any certain political idea or economic idea, because I think that's really the downfall of much of the independent media, is that they box themselves into a corner because they try to become like too ideological and try to just continue to push out a narrative, and they want their followers to all agree on something. And I think that's not the right way to go. I don't want everyone to agree on everything. That'd be a really boring world if everybody agreed on everything. What I want is that everyone can disagree on stuff and they don't have to kill each other because of it. You know what I mean? And that's really one of the main pillars of thinking that we're trying to put out there with the anti-media.
I sort of see the website as a universal media site. You cover topics from across the spectrum. Who do you see as some of your contemporaries in the so-called anti-media, to use a term as a flag, on Facebook or otherwise?
Well, that's a good question. I'm really into Mint Press News. They really expose what's going on in the Middle East, whether it's through foreign policy or the Israel-Palestine conflict, because that's a huge hotspot for propaganda, is the Israel-Palestine conflict. Almost every single politician in the United States is like pro-Israel, state of Israel, and we send U.S. taxpayers send $3-4 billion a year over there to Israel to militarize their border with Palestine, and they end up dropping bombs, killing children, this, that, and the other. Now the thing is that a lot of people like to say, oh well, if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic, But that's the thing, is like, we're not criticizing Jewish people. Many of our staff are Jewish. I'm part Jewish myself. We're not criticizing Jewish people. We're criticizing the state of Israel, the government of Israel, just like we criticize the government of the United States. We're not saying, every American is a warmonger. We're saying the American government in general is a warmongering government, and that's the real difference. And a few other sites I like right now, Revolution News. They cover world conflicts, protests, revolutions, things like that. The Free Thought Project, they're really good at exposing police misconduct, and there's plenty of independent sites out there, man. There's so many of them now. The Fifth Column is another one that covers a lot of world affairs. I think the anti-media, our focus mostly is on the U.S. government and U.S. corporations. We recently had this really big expose, and it's ongoing. I mean, it's probably going to turn into a series of about 6 articles. We're about to publish the 3rd one next week. But the article we went up with last week is the one that made the front page of Reddit. But it's about Nestle, and how Nestle. The last article is about how they're paying only $524 to extract. The water. They pay $524 to extract 27 million gallons of clean, fresh drinking water from the Southern California desert right here. And at the same time, we got these water police going around our communities here. And if they catch you washing your car during the day, watering your lawn during the day, you catch a $500 ticket. So you pay $500 if you water your lawn during the day. Nestle pays $524 a year to extract 27 million gallons of water. It's just complete hypocrisy, and like that's what we've been trying to bring about. Is not only showing what the government's been doing, because if you look at like the political spectrum on the right, you have a lot of people that want to talk about the government, bring about talk about the corruption and the cronyism and the special treatment that governments give to corporations, or the inefficiency of the government. Over to the left, you have people that want to expose corporations, corruption, money in politics, and stuff like that. So we're trying to really marry those two ideas together, where we're putting out an idea that, like, look, it's both sides of this. The government is corrupt, and the corporations are bad too, and they work together to basically screw all of us. And that's really what we cover the most of, and we really take a close look at U.S. policy, U.S. foreign policy, the prison system, the war on drugs, anything that affects people living in the United States is what we really cover. We focus on the anti-media, and the other sites I mentioned earlier, you can use them to get a real good, clear picture of what's going on around the world, and then use us to see what's going on here in the U.S.
California is doing this campaign these days about it's like the state bear shaming people on billboards or whatever to watch their water use. And I think it's a good example of government speaking to its citizens as children, if you will, even though in my opinion I don't think you should even speak to children in that way, generally speaking. However, I mean, that's a whole other topic.
I mean, that's a gray area for me, though, in a way. Like, I think it's not that we don't need to be telling people to conserve water. We just need to be doing
It's the tone.
We just need to be looking. I mean, fuck the tone. I don't even really give a fuck about
I
that.
do.
You know
I
what
mean,
I'm
if I'm
saying?
gonna pay taxpayer money, I'm not gonna get spoken to with a.
I mean, that's
tone,
fine, but like
a little tone.
you know, the semantics in that I think is something that we can save for a later date. I think like the problem is like, yeah, telling people to save water is fucking, that's fine, right? But when you're telling people to do something and you're ignoring these blatant usages and wastage that are going on in other places, well, that's when people get pissed off, and rightfully so, you know. And I think that's like, I mean, inherently, we could take that and extrapolate that into like America as a whole, right? You know, we're dropping trillions of dollars into the military complex, or we're, you know, in debt to wherever, and then we're pinching pennies here and there. You know, we're very, what is it? You know, penny wise and pound foolish, I would say. You know.
Yeah, I have a couple examples that we can quickly talk about that. First of all, you've seen the latest push about greenhouse gases, and Obama wants to cut back on a bunch of, you know, pollution and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I think we should be cutting back on pollution. I mean, anybody that stands behind a car long enough knows that you don't want to be breathing that shit in, right? But the thing that Obama doesn't mention is that the Department of Defense is the single largest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet. You know what I'm saying? So are they saying, okay, we're going to curb the emissions from the military because that's where they're all coming from? No, they're saying all you people that drive cars are going to have to pay higher taxes so that we can try to curb it in that fashion. Back to the Nestle story, there's a great example that is going on up in the San Bernardino Mountains, where Nestle, their permit expired in 1988, and the Forest Service says, oh, we don't have the resources to make, you know, to go through the process of getting them to renew their permit. So we're just going to allow them to keep paying this $524 a year while they extract 30 million-ish gallons of water. Yet during that same period of time, hundreds of cabin owners that live up in those mountains that have these little tiny cabins that pull maybe 150 maybe gallons of water a day from these places. Keep in mind, Nestle's pulling 68,000 gallons of water a day. You pull 50 gallons a day from your cabin, well, the Forest Service sure has the resources to go and renew their permits and examine their permits and their water uses. In fact, a bunch of the cabin owners were told, your permit, we can't renew your permit. You're going to have to put a water tank on your property and pay for a truck to come up here and drive water up to your property. That's what we're dealing with here. And just like you were saying, it's do as I say, not as I do. So they want to tell us to do one thing, and then the government and their buddies that finance their campaigns get to do whatever the hell they want. And that's why I think people are so mad about this whole Nestle thing, is that, you know, we're in trouble for watering our lawns. They're not in trouble at all, and they're killing off a bunch of wildlife too in these areas. They're drying up all these creeks. A bunch of rare animals that are only like endemic to these certain areas are like dying off and stuff. And it's just like, nobody wants to talk about that in the government, but they want to tell us what to do with our water. Yeah. You know, and take shorter showers. The problem is that consumer water is only a tiny, tiny fraction. It's like less than 10% of the total water usage of the state. The stuff that we water our lawns with, take showers with, and do all that thing with, that's like 10% or less. Most of the water is being used by large corporations, city municipalities, and agricultural industry. Yeah. And like Jerry Brown, our governor, he did this mandatory cutback on our water. Like, all you guys got to cut back, but we're going to go ahead and exempt all these industries that are actually the ones using all the water. And it's like, what in the hell? Where's the logic there? You know what I mean? And it just doesn't make any sense. And I think that's why people are kind of getting really frustrated with the whole process.
Yeah, the drought process in California particularly, I think, really lays out clearly the sort of, I guess, wrong information that can be presented on topics that the collective is discussing at any given time. On Facebook, we have memes that scroll across our Facebook page all day. And oftentimes, even if we don't even necessarily need to read these consciously to sort of internalize them subconsciously. And oftentimes it can get past sort of our powers of reasoning or rationality, and we can internalize things that are wrong without us even really knowing it. For instance, one thing that comes up with the drought issue was that almonds was the leading user of water in the state. And the truth of the matter is actually that meat and farming or animal agriculture is the leading use of water in the state. Yeah. And I just remember seeing day after day everybody talking about these almonds being the main perpetrator of our debt issue or of our drought issues. And it's sad to see people so far off the mark, not understanding these long-term relationships between government and big business people in the region that have allowed these sort of friendly contracts to survive. The Owens Valley River is not even in Southern California, and yet it supplies Los Angeles in particular with most of its water. basically not because of any sort of like democratic processes, but because of these big business government relationships, of which our governor today is basically a product of. I mean, he can't escape these historical trends as one man.
Yeah, and he's also allowing this fracking stuff to go on, and you know, I know it's a really, you know, subject that's kind of divisive and up in the air, but the fact of the matter is they're draining a lot of the water table to do a lot of fracking up in the Central Valley and stuff. And you know, this is our farming area. That's where they get all the water for the farming, and they're using it for fracking, man. And like the problem is, I mean, it's fine. It's like if you got your own water supply and on your own land, you're going to go and do this fracking stuff. Okay, fine. You want to do that? Fine. But when you start draining the water table, you're affecting literally everybody in that geographical area. And so you start having to, you know, we got to start balancing the public, you know, the general population's necessities with the groundwater, because a lot of people in the Central Valley, they get their drinking water from the ground. I mean, my step-grandparents live up there, and the town right next to theirs is now considered a dry town. They had completely run out of water, so they're trucking all their water in, and they used to pull all their water up from the ground. So it's a combination between the drought, over-farming, the fracking, and all this other stuff. And like these few groups of people that make a lot of money from these practices, they get to get away with it. And meanwhile, the population that pays all the taxes and does, you know, and lives in these areas, they kind of get the short end of the stick. You know, and that's a recurring theme that we're seeing pretty much over and over everywhere we look within the government. I mean, I can't really name one really efficient aspect of the government that actually runs and does exactly what it's supposed to do. I mean, so many aspects of the government are just so out of control, so bureaucratic, so riddled with corruption that it's almost, you know, hard to find anything good that comes out of it.
I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I bet there are some government agencies out there that are pretty benign. They're like, oh, all we do every day is literally like walk around and we clean up trash in this national park. That's the only thing my department does. It's just me and this desk.
I mean,
I don't even take a lunch. I'm just a simple dude.
I think there's a lot of like, you know, especially in the business that you're in, you know, there's a lot of like wading through the muck and the mire, because it's sometimes a fine line between, yeah, like, fuck, there's so much corrupt bullshit going on in the government, but then there's also so many people that are just fucking spouting shit onto the internet before they research it or do anything about that. So it's like, I mean, if I hear some kind of conspiracy sounding thing, it never really sounds far-fetched to me, because I know like what we are capable of. But then at the same time, you can't assume everything is bad, or you can't, you know, so it is kind of a fine line to walk on occasion, I think, you know?
Definitely, man. That's one problem that we run into all the time, is that so many people want to jump on these conspiracy theories and stuff, and, you know, every now and then, you know, stuff really is a conspiracy. But many times people are just so distrustful of what's being told to us that they just automatically think everything is a conspiracy theory, man. And that's one thing that we're always constantly combating on our page, because, you know, a lot of our followers are people that really want to question everything. Sorry about that.
I mean, you don't want to become the boy who cried wolf, essentially.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And, you know, I love the fact that our followers question everything, right? They question our own, every single day. We have people questioning our articles and the credibility and whether we're actually covering the full story and that kind of thing. And I love that, because it keeps us on our toes and makes sure that we're constantly trying to improve and make sure that we're fact-checking and researching and doing everything correctly. But it's so easy to get distracted by many of these conspiracies. And many times, like, people go and invest a lot of time and resources into going into these things, when in reality it's kind of pointless sometimes, you know, and you're just wasting your time going into conspiracy theories that don't really matter. The thing that matters, I think, the most, like, there was a shooting the other day where the guy shot people, like, first-person shooter. Did you guys see that?
That's terrible.
I saw stills of it, and I chose to not watch it.
Yeah, good idea.
Just because I didn't.
What's the
like,
point?
I know what happened. I mean, just the still I saw, the look of horror on that woman's face was absolutely fucking heartbreaking. Like, I didn't need to really delve much past that. Like,
exactly. And so the problem that I'm seeing online is that, like, 25% of people on my social media feed are like saying, "Oh, this is a false flag. This is a conspiracy. It didn't actually happen. the guy was firing blanks, and they're just using it to, forward an agenda. So my whole thing is that it doesn't really matter so much whether it was a conspiracy theory or whether it happened or not. What does matter is the agenda that is carried out afterwards. And it's the same thing with like 9/11 and all that stuff. It doesn't matter if it was carried out how they say it was or not. What ends up happening is the Patriot Act and things like that. The war in Iraq that was completely based on lies. Yeah, it's not whether it's a conspiracy theory or not. It's how it's used afterwards to forward an agenda. Now, in the case with the shooting, immediately you had Hillary Clinton come on the same day, act like she was crying on TV, and said that we need to start forwarding more gun control and stuff like that, and that's an obvious narrative. And then you had a bunch of sites like Breitbart and like Drudge and these kind of sites that are trying to forward this racial division, tension agenda. And
while masquerading that they're actually not doing that, they're actually going against that.
Exactly.
By adopting the same language of like the mainstream when it comes to the racial thing, except just turning it around into like a reverse racism type thing.
Exactly. They accuse everyone of being race baiters while at the same time being actual race baiters, and that's one of the agendas that is clearly coming out from the shooting, because the shooter was black and he was gay and this, that, and the other. And I literally saw an article saying, oh, well, they banned the Confederate flag after that guy shot the church, but they're not going to ban the rainbow flag after the gay guy shoots the reporter. And it's like, man, you guys really going to be, is this really the narrative that these guys are running with?
Like, this is really what you want to, this is how you want to steer the direction the country's talking? Like,
yeah, it's mind-blowing, man.
And
but this
is... Vice is writing an article like, this group of people on the internet want to ban the gay flag because of the Virginia shooting. And that's like an entire Vice.
Yeah, man, and it's sometimes this media narrative is so convoluted, and sometimes we just have to kind of ignore stories, and it's mostly what we did with this shooting story, because there's no real good way of covering it, and it's just everything coming out is really narrative driven, divisive, and I think that's what they're doing, man. Like the thing that benefits these people that are in charge of things, it's keeping all of us divided, whether it be through race, sexual orientation, age, everything like that. As long as they can keep us all fractured and stuff, they can keep on looting us for our tax dollars and starting up new wars. If we all start banding together, and this is why Martin Luther King became such a real threat to the establishment, is because at first you're like, okay, well, if as long as we can make sure that his message is divisive and we can like say that it's just trying to make a bunch of black racists to combat a bunch of white racists. That's the narrative they tried to pin on Martin Luther King at first. But when they started realizing, oh, damn, he's bringing people together by the millions, that's when they started getting really worried about him. That's when they started sending the FBI to try to derail his message, derail his movement, and stuff like that. And that's what the establishment is scared of. They're not scared of gangbangers.
Radio, I apologize.
No worries. They're not scared of gangbangers in the street. The establishment benefits from having gangbangers in the street. They love that stuff. What they're scared of is the gangbangers dropping their beef and coming together and forming some kind of alliance that actually challenges the real status quo, the real problems that we're facing, the real reasons why there's so much poverty in the cities, the real reason there's so much violence, and that's what they're afraid of. Anyone that brings people together, they're going to try to beat them down, and they're going to constantly push a narrative forward, just like in the shooting case, that is going to try to divide people based on arbitrary, superficial factors.
Yeah. To go back to the Virginia shooting, the TV station shooting, I think the narrative that struck a nerve with me most was about the relationships between the people of the station and the people who were murdered. And because I think the two people that were murdered both were in relationships with other people at the station, and one of them hadn't been really public about it. And I just remember, that's like the real human impact of that sort of situation. And not to mention, that's just two people every single day for whatever reason. People are getting murdered senselessly, really. The human impact and the toll that it takes on individuals, not to mention the loss of life, is more important than really like the crazy cultural dialogues that we have.
And I'll play devil's advocate to that, and I don't really even want to, but not to be callous, but like first person shooter live on TV is some next level fucking shit.
It really is, man. It really is. I briefly watched the clip because it was in my feed and I wasn't meaning to watch it. I just it was in my feed and it started automatically playing. I'm like, whoa, what's this? And I'm like, oh damn, it looked like a video game. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the
still that I saw, it looked like a frame from a movie or a video game or something like.
On the topic of, I understand where you're coming from. It is next level. Yeah.
And it's scary to think because, I mean, it was only a matter of time until that shit happened, right? And now, like, not to say that it's going to necessarily be fueling copycats, but
It will.
But I mean, it's not the first time you're gonna see that shit. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the last time you're gonna see it. Like it's
on
kinda
the
scary.
topic of gangbangers and not the government not wanting them to unite. That was a lot of. There's a narrative about Tupac in particular, which says that underneath the sort of veneer of Tupac, he was really working towards uniting the different sort of gangs across the country. We talk about, West Side and East Side or whatever. And realistically, this was sort of a media frenzy that was built up around these rap figures like Tupac and Biggie, and kind of took on a life of its own, in my opinion, and became a whole bunch of different things. Tupac's bodyguard at the time that he was murdered was an FBI agent, and Tupac didn't know that. He was an undercover FBI agent.
Yeah, Haitian Jack or whatever they call him.
I don't know. I think it's a different character.
Okay.
John Potash, who is a friend of OVOSS, he's been on, or he's written a book about this topic, and he's got a lot of conclusions he comes to. The FBI agent at the time of Tupac's murder warned him not to go to Las Vegas, and Tupac just didn't listen because at that point Tupac had been almost killed like 5 times in different shootings that he didn't necessarily start. And so at that point he had maybe been a little desensitized to the idea, and ultimately this guy Tupac gets murdered, and the FBI agent speaks out right afterwards and then goes to jail for 30 days for basically like blowing his cover or something. He comes out and never really opens up again. And that's just one sort of narrative or little story that pops up around Tupac and what his kind of real like perspective was on the world towards maybe more of a peaceful, interracial maybe, although I think Tupac at the age of 25 was a little bit more just kind of like black equality or more. I mean, he's also 25 when he died, so that's very young.
I fucking love Tupac. Like, I'll just say that.
Yeah, me too.
But
my favorite rapper.
But at the same time, like, I think that we let these guys off a little bit for being like, and we can kind of go and say, oh, it was the time period, which sounds like a real like nostalgic like 1880s thing to say, but like there was some misogynistic shit going on.
But there's
in
also
the gangster
some
rap
like,
days.
but also
he
with
did sing a
Tupac,
song to his mom and stuff. But
he was misogynistic and not misogynistic at the same time, and
well, I think a lot of that comes.
That's kind of the nuance.
See, if you look at like the late
I
80s,
think it was him trying to fit
very
in.
early 90s rap,
both,
you see a very like unifying message. Early 80s or late 80s, early 90s rap was like, it was activism music, and for the most part. And then at about 92, 93, you start seeing a co-opting of rap by this like corporate message where it's like, go spend your money, kill people, treat women like shit, and do all these horrible things. And it really shifted over. And I think Tupac was kind of caught in that because even if you look back at his like 93 stuff, his last albums that came out before he went to death row, it really is activism music for the most part. And then I think he kind of was left with an ultimatum where he wound up in jail, and it was like, look, man, you can come out of jail and we're going to bail you out, but you gotta conform to this message that we're trying to put out there, because they were really scared, especially after the Rodney King riots and stuff. They were scared about black unity, and that was something that was started emerging at that time.
And they're still scared about black unity.
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Pac
And so,
also is more jaded at this point. Like goes to jail. You can feel the cynicism in the later music.
And as soon as he got out of jail, I mean, the first album that came out, All Eyes on Me, it talks about money, drugs, killing people, treating women like shit. I mean, it was a total transformation, and I think it was kind of like they really wanted to co-opt this message. Suge Knight, we all know Suge Knight's a total scumbag, right? Mm-hmm. He's in jail right now, actually. Something was trending the other day that brought up how he joked about killing Eazy-E. That's a whole other conspiracy theory of its own, but he definitely said it on I think it was on Jimmy Kimmel or something a long time ago. But Suge Knight, very very shady character. He overlooked Tupac's co-opting, and many people have said that the reason Tupac ended up getting killed was because he was trying to get back out of that and go back into activism music.
Yeah.
And so then that was his final chance. They said, look, man, here's your chance. Either you follow this agenda or you're done. And he had his chance, and then he was done. I mean, I don't know exactly what happened.
That's
it's a big
basically
question.
the angle that Potash takes in his long
Really?
book that he wrote. He's a pretty academic dude, and of course you got to take the good with the bad, but there's a lot of stuff that he digs up in his books that he's written on Cobain and other artists. He basically writes about like artists getting co-opted by intelligence agencies and commercial adoption.
Yep.
He mentions a lot how Jimi Hendrix's manager was a M15 agent, so he was working for intelligence in Britain openly, and with
MI5.
MI5, and with Pac, he says the same exact thing about you see the evolution in his music, and that the people around him were kind of like influencing him. Pac wanted to quit marijuana at one point because he realized at one point he got set up. He was too stoned. He would have recognized that he was getting set up and shot 5 times if he wasn't high. But consistently, Death Row Records, Suge Knight's label, right, would put around certain players, which this Potash guy actually submits were oftentimes detectives from LAPD and NYPD. That is basically Death Row was just like an intelligence operation.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. In fact, there was a detective just died last week, and he was the guy that he investigated the shooting of Biggie, and he alleged that the LAPD had a hand in killing Biggie, and he just died last week, and so that story kind of got brought back up to the forefront, and that's a very interesting topic, man, and I don't doubt it, and a lot of it, I mean, was probably to sow seeds of distrust between East and West. First, they wanted to break the black community up between like Blood and Crip, and that wasn't enough, so they said, okay, let's break it between Bloods and Crips, and let's also break it between East and West. And if we can have everybody fighting each other, I mean, this goes back to like ancient military techniques, like the art of war and stuff like that. Having your enemy fight itself from within. In fact, the United States was deploying that exact method in Iraq, causing sectarian violence between the different groups of Muslims in that country to weaken the resistance. They pit different groups against each other, so that made it easier for them to just come in and conquer the place. That's a tactic that's been used throughout history. It's been documentedly used by the U.S. in the last decade. So I wouldn't doubt that they deploy these same kind of tactics within the music industry as well, especially within rap, to just break groups apart, make people dislike each other. Because I mean, think about it. If anybody has an enemy, what better way of getting rid of your enemy by other than giving him another enemy that he has to fight against? It's just such an easy way of dealing with things, and it works so well. And human nature really falls right into it many times, and that's why they do it. I think because humans are really susceptible for falling for that stuff. And I think we see that throughout every aspect of our culture. It's divide and conquer. That's the word for it. Divide and conquer. Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. Black, white. Everything that they can use. There's so many different little things that they can use against each other that they could use against us, and we end up fighting their war for them. We do the job, we do the hard work for them, and they just sit back and laugh about it. And meanwhile, Goldman Sachs and all these banking cartels are walking away with all of our money, and we're sitting here fighting over petty little differences. Like, I don't believe in gay marriage. Well, screw you. I do believe in gay marriage. We're fighting over this little thing, which should have been dealt with a long time ago. And meanwhile, it's like, they're sending off people to die in Syria and Iraq and all this other stuff, and the media doesn't really talk about it. But they do talk about these little cultural things, make these big cultural media narratives that we could all disagree on, and it's so easy to be manipulated, when that happens. Yeah. And it's just it's so plainly and patently obvious, but at the same time, I think mainstream America hasn't really discovered that yet. And that's one of the other things that we're trying to do with the anti-media is get it out there, man. Get it out there that they're trying to divide and conquer us all the time.
Yeah, so we got about 10 minutes left in the episode. Let's talk a little bit more about anti-media. What are you covering these days, and what do you attribute your success to?
Well, that's a great question. First off, I want to get back into that Nestle story because after that article made the front page of Reddit, we actually had a bunch of people, I can't mention any specifics, that have stepped forward as whistleblowers. I can't really say where they're from or who they work for yet. That's going to be in the article when it comes out. But let's just say we've had at least 4 whistleblowers step forward to us and give us some exclusive information regarding the corruption going on, not only in Southern California with Nestle, but what we're starting to find out is that the corruption goes all the way up to the top. We're talking about the USDA and the federal government, and even international organizations like the CFR and things like that. Nestle is I believe it's a Swiss company. It's from Europe. So they have connections. It's basically the biggest food company in the world. So they have connections all over the globe. What we're starting to see from gathering this information is that they have a business model that is based on corruption. Not like, yeah, they make products that, you know, people even question the quality of their products too, but they make products that people like, people eat and drink their products. But an integral part of their business plan seems to be corrupting local politicians, government, federal politicians, national and international politicians. In fact, there's several stories going on right now in Central America where they're trying to buy entire water tables. They're trying to buy rights to entire water tables that lie underneath populations of millions of people. And so that the people that live on the lands that have been living there, indigenous people have been living there for 15, 20,000 years, they want to drill into the ground and take water out, they're going to have to pay Nestle. You know, and so what they do is they kind of use these really, really bad business practices to advance their profit agenda. And so that's one thing that we're really starting to uncover right now in the anti-media in the next coming weeks. Maybe in the beginning of September, you know, we're going to see some stuff, and I have a feeling this is going to turn into a national media narrative once we break this news. So that's something I'm really excited about. The other thing that I'm really excited about is expanding our audience into international spaces. We just hired our first journalist from the UK, and that's been going pretty well. And so we're getting a better grasp on, you know, UK politics, because London actually happens to be the city where we have the most following. We actually have like 20,000 fans and Facebook fans in London. So we have a dedicated writer that writes about the UK once or twice a day. And then soon we're going to be looking to get someone in Canada and Australia, every English-speaking area. And in the future, we're also planning on expanding into Spanish. Now, the thing that I'm most excited about, though, that's coming up in the very near future, we're hoping to have it going strong by the beginning of next year, is Anti-Media Local. And so what we're hoping to establish is a bunch of local news affiliates in every city. We're going to start here in San Diego, and I'm going to run me and my team that are here in the office are going to run the San Diego anti-media operation, and it's going to be very similar to what we already do. You know, anti-establishment reporting on politics and corporate collusion, and also we want to, you know, to help connect with the community, is like promote good like independent music shows and, you know, everything that's part of the culture, because we believe in music as a way to transmit information. And as we were mentioning earlier in the show, there's a reason why the government takes such an effort to infiltrate the music industry and control the narrative in the music industry, because it's a very powerful conductor of information. And so what we want to do is try to promote not only local news and stuff from these local affiliates, and we're hoping to have them in every big town, every big city in the country eventually. But, you know, also promote like cultural stuff that is you know, fun, yet, you know, it's kind of, you know, working towards building community, because one of the things that we believe in is building community. To undermine all this, you know, global apparatus that controls us is by building community and, you know, working with local people to become less reliant on all these external factors and stuff like that. So that's one thing I'm really happy about. I'm hoping that having all these local affiliates will like drastically increase our reach and stuff like that too, and it really like gives us a whole nother depth to our network, because right now we just have the national organization. Once we branch off down to like all these little local ones, man, it's really going to make us like where they won't be able to just take us out. They won't be able to just shut down our Facebook page and say, okay, you guys are done. We don't want you reporting anymore. They can't just shut us down anymore. Once we have all these other ones set up, what are they going to do? Shut down every single one of us? I don't think so. And also is like expanding our real world connections and stuff like that. And that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with the local affiliates too, is getting to our journalists get to meet the community face to face, get to see what they are concerned about, what they care about. And the other thing that I'm really excited about with the local affiliates is getting more direct sources to the information. So we can directly talk to the council members, we can directly talk to the businesses, we could directly talk to local whistleblowers, like these people in San Bernardino that we're talking to. And I'm hoping that really expands our journalistic integrity, you know, and to get more exclusive stuff. That way we can also help dictate the news cycle by breaking these stories and not having to rely on the AP to dictate the news cycle anymore. We want to change all that, because the news cycle is a very important thing. That's what dictates the narratives that are going on. And the more that we can have independent people helping to dictate that, the less we have to worry about the narrative being controlled by corporate conglomerates.
What have you learned? Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh,
yeah.
No, I was just gonna. Sorry, I kind of lost it right there. But I was gonna say, yeah, totally fucking lost.
I was just thinking
Go
about
ahead,
that.
Justin,
I was going to
sorry.
ask, what have you noticed about the way the news cycle works in your research?
Well, it really gets handed down from the AP. The AP
And Reuters, would you say?
And a little bit from Reuters too. The AP is the Associated Press, and basically every big news company is a member of the AP, and it's run as somewhat of a cooperative. But they have a really strict control over the media narrative. Recently, they put out an article criticizing the Iran peace deal, the Iran nuclear peace deal. And the thing with the AP is, like, once they put out a story, it's like a wire. It gets posted on every single mainstream news outlet that exists, more or less. It's on Yahoo, it's on CBS, it's on NBC, it's on Drudge, it's on everywhere. And that's a huge problem. So this one organization is able to more or less dictate every single bit of news that gets into the mainstream narrative, outside of the stuff that happens to go viral on social media. And every now and then, social media stuff pushes its way into the mainstream. We did that several years ago with the No War with Syria rallies. We helped start that and organize that, and that, fortunately, we were able to dictate that little bit of the news cycle, and we were able to stop the outright bombing of Syria back in 2013. Now, obviously, we're bombing them again because they were able to spin the narrative again, and now they got this whole new problem with ISIS, and ISIS is now acting as like their backdoor into bombing Syria, and sure enough, it's working. But that one time in 2013, we were able to stop them, and they gave me a lot of hope. And ever since then, we've been working on a way to help independent media, non-corporate media that doesn't have an agenda. Now, of course, independent media, all media outlets are going to have flaws. They're all going to be biased. They're all going to have, sometimes they're going to be inaccurate, and that's just a fact of life. Every media outlet is going to deal with that problem. Not every source that you get can be fully vetted and fully credible, especially if it's just someone anonymously sending you a PDF file or something like that. There's no way to fully vet it every single time. Most times it's accurate, but sometimes you get fooled. But I'm just really excited about how the independent media and the social media now is really becoming more influential in establishing, what it is that the mainstream is talking about.
That's perfect, because that actually takes me into the question I was about to ask before that I forgot about.
Yeah.
So when you start with anti-media local kind of offices or whatever, like, what's going to be the vetting process then? Because you want it to be roots, right? You want everybody to have access to it, but I mean, do you guys have the time to fact check all these people coming in? Like, what do you think is going to be your process for aggregating writers or aggregating news?
That's a good question, man, and that's probably going to be our biggest obstacle. I've got a lot of experience as far as helping set up local organizations from like a national standpoint. I helped start the March Against Monsanto movement, which has been this big anti-GMO movement, and I don't want to criticize it too much, but it's lost its path a little bit. But I helped start it up, and we went from being this little event that had 300 followers to having 500 different organizations in local cities in like 25 different countries. The first march had like over 2 million people on one day marching. And so I have experience from helping set all that stuff up that I'm going to apply to the anti-media local. And the key to that was making it kind of open source, where we kind of just throw it out there and say, look, here's the platform for anti-media local. Here's what we're looking for. We're hoping to find people with a certain amount of experience or whatever. And if you think that you can do it, send us an email and then we'll check you out. Now, the finding like high quality people and making sure that we have editors and making sure everything's accurate, that's going to be the hardest part, and it's going to take on our end a lot more work and resources. And that's why this is an idea I've been sitting on for a while now, and we're finally getting ready to start rolling it out because we've had so many other things, other loose ends to tie up first. I'm going to have to add new staff and give existing people a lot more responsibilities, and it's going to be I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a headache. But I think once we get it up there and it starts rolling relatively smoothly, it's going to make us one of the premier news outlets in the entire country. Because there's no one else, as far as the independent media, there's really no one else that's doing this. There's several websites like Examiner.com that kind of does something similar, but again, they're not very credible, and I don't know. But we're going to be basically the only independent news outlet, national news outlet that has local affiliates, and that's just something that I'm just really excited about. But it's going to be a long road and a lot of work trying to make sure that everything that comes out is going to be accurate and credible. And I'm glad you asked that, man, because that's the thing that's been I've been putting a lot of my thought into and trying to work that out, and I'm still working on it. I still haven't figured it out fully, but
there's always like the model where you just run it with a disclaimer, like, hey, this is some stuff people are sending to us, but then you lose a little bit in that because you're kind of losing that credibility, or you're diluting your brand a little bit sometimes if you're just allowing anybody to have access to it. But it's a lot of work to vet everything too,
man, to get every single article edited and stuff. It's going to be a pain, man. But we're hoping to get each local affiliate like self-contained, so that they have their own editor in-house, and a couple journalists and a couple people that are good with photography and video editing and all that kind of thing. And so hopefully we can build each little organization, like 5 people, 6 people, whatever, and each one will be more or less like self-contained. And also the cool thing, economically speaking, we're going to run it as like a worker-owned cooperative, and each local affiliate is going to be granted like a certain amount of voting power over the entire organization as well. So that the people that are running the local affiliates are going to be partially owning it as well. Of course, the anti-media is going to own some of it as well, but they're going to have a vested interest in the company, and they're also going to have a say on how the overall company runs as well. So that's really something, a kind of innovative step that we're taking to really democratize our company and stuff like that, and make sure that everybody that does become a part of this, because we're talking right now, we got like 25 people. We're talking when we get all these local affiliates, man, we're gonna have hundreds and hundreds of people working with us, and so we want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard within the company, man. And so that's one way I'm hoping to maintain quality control, high productivity, and just make sure that everybody that's working with us is like really satisfied with what they're doing.
Beautiful. I think it's plug time.
Plug time?
Yeah, now we get butt plugs out. We do some weird shit at the end of each episode.
Fuck yeah. I forgot about that.
Tell us, where can people find you?
You can find me at theantimedia.org. That's our main website. On Facebook, which is our main outlet for pushing out all the information, and memes. That's one thing you guys don't want to miss, is our memes. We have some really controversial memes. One of them got us banned for a day the other day, comparing Trump's rhetoric to the Nazis and his wall building habits to the Soviets. That got us banned, and we're actually going to put an article out about that, but you can find us on facebook.com/theantimedia.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, another quick question though, with like the Facebook page versus the antimedia.org, is there differences in content? Are you pushing different stuff out on each?
Yeah, on the Facebook page, we share a lot of other websites as well. So you're going to see the Free Thought Project, you're going to see the Fifth Column, Mint Press News, some of the websites I talked about earlier. True Activist, which is more of a little positive spin. We post them overnight because we don't want to. Most of our articles are like highly critical, anti-establishment stuff. Overnight, we post a little bit more of a positive vibe type of content, and we have a lot of social media partners that we share content of theirs. They share content of ours, so you'll see some of that stuff mixed in here and there. March Against Monsanto, we still post some of their stuff on there as well. So yeah, the Facebook page is a great spot. On Twitter, you can find us at the Anti-Media 1. On Instagram, the Anti-Media. Basically, if you just Google the Anti-Media, you'll be able to find all of our platforms. And we're also on YouTube now. We're starting up our video programming. That's something that we're also in the development stage on, is the video programming. That's going to roll out right before we roll out the local media platform too. So that's something exciting to look forward to.
Nice. One time I saw the bassist of Bad Religion share one of your articles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Jay
Nice.
Bentley from Bad Religion had the antimedia.org share on Facebook.
Nice, man. I should get his. I got to get his info so that I can contact him and have him show more of our stuff.
I have another buddy that shares a lot of your guys' stuff, and I would say that you guys are like the least conspiracy based of most of the shit this guy shares.
Yeah, see, he's probably saying.
Who's that? We got to have that dude on.
We've had him on,
Who?
actually. Dangerous Dick Spinnenberg. He was on the Dangerous Dick and Skiba show on Free FM, and we interviewed him at a comedy club in Claremont maybe like 3 years ago. So we did have him on, but we should have him on again.
Is that a lost episode?
It probably is a lost episode, actually.
I'll have to look that
It
up.
might be. It was, I think, with Michael Castleberry as well. Which is a local comic who's really funny. So.
All right, I think that's OVOSS 66. You can find us at ovos.fm.
Okay,
Well,
be sure
thank
to
you
check
guys for having me
out
on, man.
the
Our pleasure.
Anti-Media
Thank you.
Facebook page, guys, antimedia.org. UCY.tv is another outlet you can find them on.
Oh yeah,
They
that's why I
have-
forgot to mention our radio show Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific time on UCY.tv as well.
Check it out. Good shit, guys.
All right, peace.
All right, thanks a lot, Nick.
Thanks.
Sweet. Now we can eat some sandwiches.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.